Hello everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of Reaching Horizons with your host Abbas Hussain. Today, I've got a very special guest and a very special topic, a topic that I've not really spoken about before and not really heard much about in recent year or two, had it not been for this particular woman and this particular group. She is a human rights activist that is very, very vocal on the issue of Kashmir at the moment. We all know the atrocities committed in Indian occupied Kashmir. We've not turned a blind eye to, and they are a violation of international human rights and the United Nations Security Council's resolutions as well. So without any delay, I will introduce to all of you guys Claire Bidwell. Hello, Claire.
Hi there. Thank you for inviting me along. It's great to be here.
No, it's a pleasure. I mean, the Let Kashmir Decide group, it was something that was, I didn't hear of it, but I did hear of it from Facebook. And then just like that, I saw it just like explode. Like so many people were interested in what you were doing. And I believe before COVID, there were a few tea parties as well. Am I mistaken regarding Kashmir?
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea ended up centering around wanting to have a world solidarity event so that we could raise awareness to the outside world. And we'd wanted to go to Kashmir and have this tea event. So it was in trying to raise awareness for that event that led us towards meeting lots of different people. And we did have our solidarity event. Unfortunately, we couldn't go to Kashmir as we'd hoped, but we did do it online. So, and it's still an aim for us to have this global tea event. We just have to wait for COVID to settle.
I think like a lot of people from different countries have actually joined Let Kashmir Decide. I mean, you're the co-founder of Let Kashmir Decide. So how many people roughly from how many different countries do you think approximately have joined your cause?
Oh my goodness, I think it's really hard to put a number on because there are numbers beyond what we have, if that makes sense. So we do have a network of WhatsApp groups which do have, a fair amount of number from different countries. And we've got about 30 countries that we reach out to with the WhatsApp groups. But then obviously beyond those people are those that are on the Facebook site. I mean, our Facebook group, we lost the first one, unfortunately. Facebook shut it down. And we had about 3,500 members on it. Wow. So we're currently, I think, nearly at 1,500 members again. So, but I think our reach is perhaps beyond that. And then people that are part of it, I really don't know if I could put a number on it. I really don't know.
It's a really difficult thing to do, but I was just thinking about because obviously I know from a person from the outside, I will say, who's got no particular role, just, keeping up with updates, helping where I can. I remember it did blow up quite a lot. I mean, there was hundreds of comments on your Facebook group saying, I'd like to join this WhatsApp group. I'd like to support you on your cause. And I think out of everyone I probably met that is involved in this Let Kashmir Decide cause and, being a vocal point for Kashmir and what's happening in Kashmir, by far you've been probably the most vocal and the most active, and it's a massive amount of respect for you. So yeah, how many countries do you think people have like kind of joined your group? I know a lot in, I think, is it the United States have joined the group? How many different countries do you think?
Yeah, we've got about 30, and what we've got then is a country representative for each group, and then we have got continental representatives. So it's like a network that we've got the world reps at the top. So we've got a core team there of 5 of us. But I think the thing is about us is that we're all work in our own right, that we're all, so everybody, and that's the beauty of it. So the connections that I've got, I feel very much that what I do is I'm trying to bridge the gap between the Kashmiri community and the world. So, and the idea with the country representatives that we have is that they're within their country trying to spread out the news also, essentially perhaps do the same thing as I'm doing in the UK. So it's kind of like, I never set out to be, it's the word, like say a leader as such. It's just, I do what I do. And I do know that inspires other people to do the same. So it's that kind of, what is it they say? Don't leave me because I may not follow. Don't walk behind,
Yeah.
walk beside me. It's that kind of, so I raise the work of a lot of other people, I think, which then, that I'm lucky in that respect, because of the amount of knowledge then in those people. They all then support me because of the platform we've got, the journey we've got. And so it's I'm more than one person. It's that we're a big team. There's a whole lot of us. You might see one person here, but actually there's probably thousands, and certainly a core 100 that are contributing to that, if that makes sense. I'm just fueled by this huge sense of injustice and a very real wrong, and want to see it put right. And whilst it might seem really complicated in the depths of it, I also feel there's a real simplicity to it, with the right for self-determination, that would solve a lot of issues.
In regards to, obviously, I know, and any of those who are watching from the Let Kashmir Decide group know that you've been a very strong vocal point for Kashmir, but like, you are a human rights activist. So what kind of other issues have you been vocal about in the past, few years?
Well, essentially, I'm a pro-Kashmiri activist, and I think just through that, other issues come up. So Palestine, Syria, etc., and even the Rohingyas are involved in all of those. But it was the lockdown of the Modi government when they came in on the 5th of August and revoked the self-autonomy, Article 370, 35A, and I learned from a friend that he couldn't contact his family, and that opened my eyes to it. Prior to that, I hadn't been doing any human rights activity. So it was the Kashmir cause and that plight that brought me to it. And then I remember, it was looking around at the state of the world and thinking, this is just ridiculous. And I felt, and I do still feel very much, that if we can solve the Kashmir conflict, the mechanics that we need to solve that through governance will also see that, help Palestine and other places, the human rights abuses and things that are happening in many places. So it was that kind of, and I think sometimes it's like you choose your, I can't be everywhere, I can't do everything. So it's like, I think probably a more correct role for me would be a pro-Kashmiri activist, but it does cover, it's all encompassing human rights activist. So
I mean, that's very, obviously, good to hear. There are a lot of human rights activists, who are fueled by their own passion, and I can see, obviously, your passion is, government injustice against their people, against certain types of people. It might be in certain cases, as is the case in Kashmir. But yeah, I've not really got to meet a lot of human rights activists in my time so far, 20 years. But obviously, you're probably like one of 4 human rights activists that I've actually met, and this is probably the furthest in the conversation that I've been with you, because I'm from Kashmir. So obviously I'm kind of interested and very much fueled to talk about Kashmir and to find a sustainable resolution in essence to the conflict in Kashmir. And obviously, as I've said, you've been a great vocal point for that. So I pledge my support in any way I can as a 20-year-old. But yeah, it's fantastic to hear. Obviously, you're very active in this. And I think in terms of human rights and, pro-Kashmiri activists and stuff like that, we kind of need more, because there's not, as you were mentioning, obviously, before we started the show as well, on social media, the amount of people that you've tried to, influential people that you've tried to reach out to, and they've not really responded. But, the larger the voice, the more, chances there are that, someone in the institutions of power or the institutions of government will reply to you. Do you want to just briefly talk about your tweets? I'm not very good with Twitter, so I'll just let you take care of that.
Yeah, I mean, social media is a big role of everything we do, and I'm also a peace ambassador within SPAD. They recognise the work I do, which is a peace movement. And so within their group as well, there's a lot of human rights issues that are raised. I think, yes, Twitter, Twitter, sometimes it's underestimated by some people because it's kind of like it's inside and people can't see it, and they think you waste a lot of time and energy within there, but actually it does reach out to people, and then people share it and people spread it. So the recent example has been of this Sharma MP, Virendra Sharma down in MP in Southall, who wrote to the BBC complaining that they'd used the wrong maps, and it was a very BJP line that he appeared to have taken. So there's been a big uproar in that because he's going against Labour policy. And there's already huge concern about the power of the Indian lobby. And so it didn't sit comfortably at all. Now, the power of Twitter has meant we've been able to reach out, and we have then, other MPs have joined in and shared things. And there's been a response from the Southall Labour Party within Twitter. So there is that power there. And, we've got our American rep, she's a whiz on Twitter, and she gets in and shares her points and trying to influence other people's opinions. It's all very powerful. And I think with COVID, even on Instagram and on Facebook, you've got people at home searching through things, and it's a weapon that we've never had before. People have said this Kashmir conflict's been going on for 73 years, it's not going to be solved now, and you're like, well, why not? It's been so hidden before, and social media has given us that opportunity to bring it out and get out with the control of the press in the UK or in many Western societies where they've stopped the information from coming out.
I think in terms of, as you mentioned, the power of social media, it is very, very powerful. I mean, if we just take into consideration what's happening now with the vaccine and coronavirus, I did a show about this last week with Alex Norris, who's an MP for the Labour Party, represents Nottingham North. And we were talking about conspiracy theories and how the power of WhatsApp and Facebook and stuff have instilled fear into predominantly the Asian community. Like there's some kind of DNA replicating hormones or ingredients inside the vaccine. And we're just talking about that and the power of social media, how it can, either benefit society or harm society in a sense. And that are the two main roles of social media. And in this sense, you've spoke about how social media has helped your cause and how a lot of Labour MPs have now responded to, I believe, was it, what was the MP's name from?
Virendra Sharma.
Yeah, Mr. Sharma, his tweet about BBC using the wrong map of India. And I'm assuming what he meant by that is the BBC didn't incorporate the whole of Kashmir inside that map as India. And I think that was his issue. And which in a sense, as you said, it would be against Labour policy as well and international and the UN Security Council resolutions that were passed as well. So yeah, I mean, obviously social media has been very, very important at this time as well, because just a small tweet, I mean, I tweeted a few weeks ago about a PlayStation 5. And the amount of, obviously, I don't have a lot of followers. Let's say I have 50 followers and I'm following 50 people. But obviously, if I click on impressions, about 8,000 to 9,000 people saw my tweet. And I was like, I don't think it's right. It might be a glitch or something. But then my friend told me that the outreach of Twitter is quite powerful. That's why a lot of people and a lot of celebrities tend to use Twitter. And as you've mentioned as well, a lot of people have been supporting you and your tweets have been outreaching to a lot of communities. So, I mean, especially during lockdown as well, the power of social media has kind of helped us all in a sense, and especially the Let Kashmir Decide group, it's helped that very much.
Yeah, I mean, that was a huge part of our journey because that's how I started. I went into, there was nothing in the newspapers, nothing on the television, and I was thinking, this is ridiculous. Why not? So that took me into social media sites, then took me into discussions, and I met people within those groups from all around the world, but Kashmiris, Indians, Pakistanis, having all kind of dialogues. And you can very quickly pick up common human nature in different countries. So it was sort of very clear, but that then made the connections. I mean, the co-founder is Azad, he's in Kotli and Azad. So we would never have connected. We connected through Kashmir Discussion. It was his idea to set up a group to raise awareness. And that's how it simply started. And then it just grew. It just grew arms and legs. And, I did get on foot and go around London. I've been out to Islamabad and I met people personally. Just one for myself to learn, but also gaining stuff to try and gain support for this solidarity event, which was then to read outwards. I wouldn't have been able to do I wouldn't be able to do any of what I've done without social media. So it really has changed the dynamics of things and the information that's out there.
In terms of your visit to Islamabad, did you meet any kind of political figures or, activists over there that helped your cause?
Yeah, I mean, again, the link came about when I first started this. I had some human rights activists contact me either personally or through WhatsApp, reaching out for me, because there's very much, when you're on a journey like this, it's heart-led. It's a feeling, and you have to act on. For me, I have to act on it. If I don't act on it, I don't feel good. So sometimes I say this is selfish, because I need to act on it, because I don't, I'm not feeling good. So I met some, there's a Karen, a lady in Canada. She's actually a Canada country representative. She works for Justice and Peace, and she organised some, set up some meetings for me in Islamabad. So I did. I mean, I'm going to have to pull back at my memory, but I met various people, some that work for the UN. I met up with Sardar Anwar, he's an advocate of the JKLF, and he introduced me to many people. I met with, I forget his name, from the Awami Party. I want to say Mr. Mr. Shah. Sorry, sir, I've forgotten your name. And I met with them, and we shared views and dialogues. I met with somebody from the Azad. Again, the name's not coming to me right now. Somebody from the Azad government who I sat with for listened to me for half an hour and was going to help support the solidarity event. They were really pleased. So yes, I met lots of people when I was out there, and even members. I met team members when I was out there as well, who were part of different groups. So it was good. And the same, that's what I did around the UK. Went and met up with Tariq, JKLF, different people, just activists. So yes, I've met a lot of people.
I mean, you've sent quite a lot of letters out as well to MPs, I believe, and councillors, talking about your Let Kashmir Decide group and the need for them to be vocal as well and bring up the issues in Parliament. So how many MPs and councillors would you reckon that have actually replied back to you? Or has it been
I've had, my own MP is fantastic. He's a great supporter, and his role he's an SMP, and his role is like human rights. He's linked to, that's his role. He's very supportive. I've had responses from like Labour Friends of Kashmir groups, but when you write personally yourself to other MPs, I'm not one of their constituents. But what we do is members in that constituents will then send their letter, or ones that we've worked on together. Councillors, that's been done. I've just written all down to the Labour councillors, every single one of them, and I've not had a response. And I don't know if that's just because the content of the letter, I'm not within the area, or they're still waiting to respond. We did once write to all the countries, every single world leader, when we were our first campaign, that we were campaigning for the release of Yasin Malik, and the only one we did have a response was from our own Foreign Office. We had no response from any other country.
Well, let's hope maybe they do reply, or the letters got lost somewhere and they probably send another letter. But that's really good to hear. I mean, you did visit Islamabad, as you've said. Did you manage to visit? Obviously, there's a lot of special things about Islamabad, but it's got one of the world's biggest mosques, Faisal Masjid. Did you like that? The mosque?
I loved it.
It's very well architectured and stuff.
It's beautiful.
Just that. How was the food there?
Oh, I didn't actually eat there.
Oh.
No, we just went. Yeah, it was a group member I'd met up with, so he took me along there to show me. It was a beautiful day, and the sun was shining off the surface, and it was lovely. It was just lovely.
The food there is quite nice. They have like dabbas, so they'll have stalls on the street, and they'll make like sweet corn and like jarred salad and stuff like that, and it's really nice. I
need to go back for the food then.
Maybe we'll go together this time.
Yeah.
So we'll just like move on to a few questions now, and we'll begin with obviously the group that you found and Let Kashmir Decide. So what is Let Kashmir Decide?
Well, we're essentially a movement that's trying to unite all Kashmiris, regardless of their ideology. So whether they want to go with Pakistan, whether they want to be independent, you know, and all the different political groups to build that unity and make it stronger. But to raise awareness amongst the common people. So it was simply based on raising awareness, standing in solidarity. We were based on a petition which has been submitted, but at the same time is still out there, which is seeking self-determination for the Kashmiris. We want the removal of all the troops, an international peacekeeping army going in, so the area is stabilized, give them the plebiscite, and then, you know, the consequences of that, whatever the decision is, to then be, you know, helped by the international community to stabilize it. So that was our aims, that's where we were going. And in that whole journey, I guess, of standing in solidarity and raising awareness, different issues get brought up that we try and support, we try and help, we try and grow. So I think we're trying to focus within the UK on getting a humanitarian envoy investigation going in there, human rights, to assess the situation, because no one's being allowed in. I think I might be right in saying that the UK government have actually asked for that. As soon as the situation allows, is what they're saying, which is with regard to COVID. And I think that's because of all the hard work that people have been doing within the Kashmiri community, and, you know, politicians, councillors in their own right that are working hard. And so all the MPs we saw in the debate last week raising their voice, you know, that will worry India, and it will also make the UK government see they do need to act and alerts to other people. So I think I'm right in saying that they have asked India that they want to send people from the British embassy in Delhi or in India to be able to go in, and I think that's where we're at. But obviously we need to be pushing harder, because Modi's going through Kashmir so quickly, altering the demography. You know, the land laws have been changed. You can buy land in there regardless of who you are, and set up. So he's going so fast, and we need to work fast, because it won't be long before it's lost. And so I think as well, we're looking for things like the human rights to take a big part, and then impact on trade deals. I mean, that's where the power should be. Our country should be refusing to do trade deals where a country are treating citizens in the way that they are, and you know, and illegally occupying a land against UNSC regulations and those huge human rights abuses. They should be taken to task. And you know, so this is kind of our journey, raising awareness. We believe the more people that we can bring this knowledge to, you know, there's that strength then in unity, that or more people can raise their voices and more people can make this happen. And we're powerful, we're stronger together than we are by any division.
I mean, definitely, you mentioned, obviously, Narendra Modi is very well, I mean, like very fastly going through occupied Kashmir and changing the rules, their regulations. They're having the people there in their own little lockdown. I mean, they've had no connection, and I've seen a lot of articles as well that they've had no connection with the outside world. Their human rights have been breached as well. No access to anything online, restrictions of, you know, freedom of speech, freedom of democracy, all stuff like that. And I mean, the British government, if they are going to do something, and as you said, they should really act fast before it's too late and the land is lost. But yeah, I mean, it's fantastic work what Let Kashmir Decide is doing. And obviously you've got a whole hierarchy, in a sense, you know, different countries acting together. You've got people there who are presiding over the people who are part of Let Kashmir Decide there, whether it be England, America, Canada, any other country. So, I mean, you've got a very good system established that supports you. So a massive shout out to you and, you know, all your group who support you and who are leading this group forward and being a vocal point for the Kashmiris who are deprived of their rights. But yeah, there was obviously, I don't know much about the next issue about Yasin, Malik, but I do know about political prisoners. And those are people who, for anyone that doesn't know, correct me if I'm wrong, those are people who speak against the government and then they are held against their will in a prison or in, you know, any other sort of place in completely, what's the word I'm looking for? completely disconnected from their society and their family and stuff like that. Marginalized, that was the word I was looking for, marginalized. We got there in the end. But yeah, do you want to just briefly speak about the political prisoner that you're currently, being a vocal point for, and Let Kashmir Decide is being a vocal point for?
Yeah, I mean, essentially for the political prisoners, there's an old antiquated law that they use, the Public Safety Act, PSA, which they then, the Indian government use that against anybody that's speaking up. So you're right in what you're saying there. These prisoners are simply people, like me or anybody that is speaking up. And I think, there are many of them. Stand with Kashmir, if anybody wants to have real insight into each of the political prisoners' stories, Stand with Kashmir are doing an amazing campaign. They have an amazing site. They've got details of all the political prisoners listed there. And what we're seeing within that is all the it's like all the ill health and everything that they're holding, and basically all they've done is stand up and speak for their rights. So there are, different ones in there. So Shabir Shah has been in prison for about 33, 34 years just for asserting his rights, doesn't keep well health, into hard jail. The conditions that they are in are cruel as well. And he's actually recognized as a prisoner of conscience by Amnesty International, whereby they're just held for raising their voice, for standing up against what India doesn't believe in. What we've done, or what we're doing, and we've done a campaign for Yasin Malik before, and I think it's like when Nelson Mandela was recognized as a prisoner, his name became worldwide known. And then we all know the story with where he went, it ended apartheid. He became president of South Africa. So we've been campaigning for Yasin Malik on the strength of being one of the political leaders who's sought self-determination as a right for the Kashmiris, and he's recognized, he's in the hearts of many. They call him the Lion of Kashmir. He's been in and out of jail on fabricated charges over the last 30 years. And I mean, he was arrested not long before the lockdown in 2019, 7th of March or 7th of May, again, under this Public Safety Act. And so they knew before they were going to lock down Kashmir that if they did that and Yasin Malik was free, they were going to have this voice. And they've essentially locked up a political voice. Now, Yasin Malik was charged on again, something that happened 30 years ago. And he'd been released back in, I can't remember what year, sorry, but he'd been released and invited back onto a political stage in exchange for giving up arms. And he spoke at like a big democratic event as well about politics. And it was all, meant to be back into the political system, and he was accepted within that. He's been visited England, he visited America, and then there we go, just before the Indian government lockdown, he's been charged and locked up again. And now he does not keep good health. He does have problems with his heart. He's in a tiny cell where he cannot even stretch his legs. It's an open toilet, so you're open to diseases. And he's not the only one in there undergoing this. And he probably should be declared, I mean, he is a prisoner of conscience also. I'm not sure that he's declared one by Amnesty, but that's something we would push for. So we will be campaigning for Yasin Malik again. We're going into campaign 2. We're starting off this weekend with a double Twitter storm. We had one on Thursday as the first one. We're having another tomorrow on Twitter. The first one was under the hashtag of India Free Yasin Malik. Tomorrow's is hashtag Free Yasin Malik now. Now, it's something that we will build up the momentum. So Yasin Malik's wife, she's just released a video, that we've been able to share and put out there public, urging the international community to support the release of Yasin Malik. Now, he's not seen his wife or his child for about 6 years, such is that divide between the two and the unacceptance. But she's also pointing out really quite rightly and quite strongly that this voice of Kashmir that is locked up, if he dies or they kill him because it's coming close to they're putting together evidence to, take him to trial, then there's going to be big instability. That's not something that Kashmiris or the world community are going to allow to happen easily. And we've got countries here with nuclear weapons. So we start to go into those bigger issues of where we're looking at the basic, how we're treating other human beings, and how we're certainly not being democratic, and those echoes of going back to Nazism in Germany, and we know where that all went. So it starts to become, you know, it's massive. So it might be Yasin Malik, you know, one man, one face, one person's huge extreme struggle, but it filtrates out so widely, and there's something like 4,000 to 13,000 prisoners in Kashmir since the lockdown of 2019 that were put into Jammu and Kashmir, you know, husbands, boys, teenagers, anybody that they thought would come out and stand up. And we've now got something like this 264 political prisoners, people that are just imprisoned for speaking up, for being part of a democratic process. But obviously India got them on the Public Safety Act because they're not speaking up for India. They're trying to, you know, look at democracy. Some of these have been in prison for years, not just since the lockdown. So it's more than one. You know, we'll use Yasin Malik as our face, because he promotes self-determination. We promote self-determination. He looks for unity. And that's the one that I think there's a lot of heart with, connection, but we are also supporting all other political prisoners. We figure that if we take one face, as people have advised along the route, human psychology will often identify with one story, one face, one person, and then that covers all other issues. And so we're going on for our second campaign for Yasin Malik, and we will have support of, you know, all different groups and people around us. We've got lots of different ideas to raise that awareness through releasing songs, events. Once we can get back onto the ground, we'll do different events. We'll continue with the Twitter storms, and just keep trying to get the message out there. We'll write to all countries again. We'll write to the government. We'll write to the councillors. We'll keep getting the voice out there and doing as much as we can to get the message out there, really. Yeah,
but that's perfect to hear. Obviously I wasn't very well aware of obviously Yasin Malik, but I was aware that India has held a lot of political prisoners who have had a political role in the Jammu and Kashmir. I think one of the ex-leaders of the Jammu and Kashmir that was under house arrest, I think about a year ago or half a year ago, if I remember correctly. But yeah, a lot of nasty things are happening behind closed doors in Jammu and Kashmir, where the Indian government has deployed a lot of soldiers as well. I think they were saying for every citizen there's about 4 soldiers or something like that. I'm not really sure, but for one citizen there's about
I think there's 8 for one citizen. Yeah, they sent in, there was like 800,000 troops, nearly 1 million troops in there, and they're on the streets. So the Kashmiris themselves are getting squashed all the time. They can't move, and even all their social media accounts, all the newspapers, the media, you know, it's horrendous. So we've got the basics. You know, the basic horrendous of it is all the human rights abuses itself. So the rapes used as a weapon of war, you know, the torture, all the fake encounters, just the killings, the abuse. So they're living under fear, fear to speak up, fear to speak out. Like I say, heavy military on the street everywhere, the reporting being clamped. You know, and the news came out, what was it, 2 months ago now, about a large disinformation system that the Indian lobbying power have, where and it was an independent report in Europe, Disinfo Lab, I think, that did it, the Chronicles, India Chronicles, and it established that they've got people in media, in politics, and they've targeted learned academic people with their stories, and they've infiltrated all these stories, mainly anti-Pakistan stories, that have got really embedded. And so this report is great because it reveals all of that. There's 2 human rights reports that have just been released as well about the atrocities that are occurring. And you know, it's hard evidence. It's not just hearsay, and they're horrendous. They make for horrendous reading. So it's, you know, sometimes when we're doing this campaigning, it's not that we forget what we're campaigning for, but it's kind of heartbreaking to keep dwelling on all those stories. Now, obviously, that's part of our role at Let Kashmir Decide as well, to share those stories and get them out there. And there are some strong Kashmiris out there involved in this that are managing to reach out, and we're able to lift that higher. I think it's the same, you know, my knowledge, I've only been doing this since August 2019, so sometimes I'm aware there will be people that know Yasin Malik's case inside out, that can tell somebody the whole in depths of it. And so I have, you know, I'm in contact with those people. So any questions or things I need to find out more about, or information they can give me, that's great. And I think because my role is to just to raise the knowledge out there as best I can, really, because I think people in the general world, they don't know. A lot of people just simply do not know. You ask a common person in the street who's Yasin Malik, and they probably wouldn't know what you were talking about. So that's the kind of job, is to try and reach out to make sure his name and the situation and everything that he's enduring and going through, you know, and family and people around him, and then into Kashmir, what's going on.
I think, yeah, obviously, as I said, I wasn't very aware with Yasin Malik and stuff, but now that you've told me, it's kind of, you know, it's just shocking to see that, you know, the international government is to be held accountable as well, because the last thing that the international government want is a war within a country like India, where, you know, there's been past events as well. I'm not sure if you were aware with the Babri Masjid, where it's for hundreds and hundreds of years it's been a mosque, then it was a temple, then it was a mosque again, and stuff like that. And there was a whole civil unrest inside India because of that issue. And the last thing that international governments want is a war between Pakistan and India, where it'll have a multiplier effect, where from one side you have Pakistan with allies with countries like China, you know, countries like that, and Turkey and Iran and stuff, who are nuclear powers, and they have very powerful forces. And then you have India with allies like, you know, America and stuff. And so
there's no doubt it's a very, very real threat. I think, I mean, we're focused on obviously the human rights abuses and trying to get those addressed, but also underlying all this is that very real threat. And you know, the situation could change any day. You know, we all wake up tomorrow and yeah, they're at war. It just so we just sort
of Pakistan and India, they've fought over Kashmir before. In the 1970s, I believe, or even before that, 1960s, where the main point of focus, the main reason why they were at war was because of Kashmir. And as I said, the international government do not, especially the UN as well, they don't want two countries like this, you know, a world leading economy like India and, you know, a strong military force like Pakistan. They don't want them fighting each other and destroying each other, because that would pose a serious threat to other countries as well around the world, not only in Asia. So, you know, as you said, there's a lot of underlying factors and underlying consequences of the issue of Kashmir. And if there is no solution anytime soon, then we still see that potential threat of, you know, India.
Yeah, I mean, essentially we've got India as a strong world economic power who are incredibly difficult to deal with within their government. And anyway, and so our governments don't want to, you know, the UK at the moment, we're just leaving Europe, we're looking for new, you know, trading deals, new trading partners. So it suits them to all turn the blind eye because of the economy of it. But we, you know, that's where we need to be assertive now, that we need to see a different world. We need to see where humanity is put over economy, because it will come back on us anyway. And I think that's why there's so much hope, even though we know American politics and, you know, there's a slight reality of it, how much can change. There's a lot of hope and a lot of optimism around Joe Biden and his, you know, push for respect and respect for humanity, that something can't just be done because they, you know, have we not learned anything from Nazism? Have we not learned anything from the war? Have we not, you know, if we don't step forward and take a stand against this BJP government, this right extremism, then we're being incredibly foolish. And so I guess there's always a hope with me that more is going on at the diplomatic level, behind closed doors, than we can actually see. So we're like a grassroots movement on the ground, reaching to as many, you know, ordinary people, academics, knowledgeable people, Kashmiris, politicians, up to our politicians. But there are also those working within the United Nations, you know, the human rapporteurs, European Parliament, that are, you know, hopefully, possibly somewhere, somebody doing something that will come, you know, will come to make a difference. It's just always the hope. Otherwise, you look around and it looks very bleak. It's like, are we banging our head on a brick wall? And I think that was the feeling when, with the BBC map, if they were to show the BBC map without Kashmir as a disputed area, then we're losing, you know, a hold or a belief in the United Nations values. So it's quite huge. That, to me, this whole issue with this MP Sharma is what we're fighting against. You know, this strong, extreme views.
I think another thing as well, like in terms of that, history should never repeat itself, in the sense that, you know, the loss of human life, you know, in the World War II, it was the Jewish community who, the Holocaust, that was something that, you know, shook the world, and it's still, you know, shaking the world every time there's a Holocaust memorial. It's just, you know, how did we let this happen? And, you know, if we carry on the route that we're going, in 10, 15 years, we're going to look back and be like, how we let these things happen in Kashmir, in Burma, in Myanmar, in these different countries, in Somalia, you know, where there's a lot of atrocities committed against the people from the government, and sometimes it's from dictatorship as well. You know, there's been various genocides as well in the past 20, 30, 40 years, and we don't learn anything. It's just, you know, it's just really sad to see. And as you mentioned, countries should put people and humanity before economy, and that's something obviously that the Conservatives have failed at already. If we look at the way that they've you know, controlled the coronavirus and, you know, lockdown, they didn't put the people before the economy. It's always the economy before people. And, you know, there's a potential cut in universal credits as well. So, you know, all those working class people and all those people who don't have jobs, they're not employed, they are going to be suffering. Same likewise with free school meals as well, you know, depriving young children of meals. It's just, you know, ridiculous. And if obviously they're not going to look after their own people within their country. I mean, the motto of England, I believe, is something like the people or something like that. And, you know, if they're not going to do stuff and put their own people before the economy, then, you know, there's not much hope for issues like Kashmir and Burma and all those issues around the world.
I mean, and that's the thing with Kashmir, because what's really sad anyway, if we look back over the last 70 years, you know, the amount of deaths and atrocities that have occurred is horrendous. So there's mass graves, you know, and we've got what's meant to be the ceasefire line between the two countries. It's, you know, the zone itself is the most heaviest militarized zone in the world, and there's always the shooting at the line of control, and people have lost their properties, they've lost their lives. I mean, one of the images imprinted in my head is the poor mother looking up at the heavens as she's cradling her dead child in her arms, and the shoe lying nearby, and the pain that woman has gone through. And this is at the hands of our government too, because they're selling the weapons to them, you know, and so it's all becomes a big tangled web, because without the ceasefire line, or with a ceasefire line and no military presence, there would be none of these wars. And so the world are facilitating this. They're allowing this to happen because of the money they then get from it. And it all could be so simply solved.
I think in terms of, obviously, you spoke about weapons. Britain is a massive exporter of weapons, not only to obviously India as well, but Saudi Arabia. And they have been, you know, we know what's happening in Yemen, described as one of the world's largest humanitarian crises in, you know, a very long time. And the amount of people, amount of children especially, who are deprived of a lot of things that, you know, we so easily get. It's just, you know, in 2020, it's just really sad to see where, you know, we have the luxuries of life, you know, sipping on a cup of tea, or whether that, you know, while doing a podcast. It's something that, you know, those people in countries like Yemen and Kashmir are deprived of. They can't speak freely, they can't act freely, and it's just really upsetting to see. And as I mentioned before as well, during the beginning of this talk show, you know, a massive amount of respect to you and your group, Let Kashmir Decide. And it's fantastic to see that we've still got humans like yourself who are very vocal on this point, whether or not they have support from the powerful, whether they're not, they have support from the aristocracy. You know, as humans, I always believe the purpose of life is to serve others, whether that be, you know, serving Christians, Jews, Sikhs, Hindus, whatever. We all have one thing in common. We're all humans. We live under one sky on the same earth. We drink the same water. It's just, you know, something that I very closely in my heart believe in, that a human should try his best to serve others in any way possible. So it's just really sad to see that we're the government, we're international government, we're the aristocracy, we're world leaders are failing. We still have people like you and people like, you know, the members of Let Kashmir Decide, who are vocal points for issues like this, for vocal points for humans who are deprived of their voices. So, you know, a massive amount of respect to you and Let Kashmir Decide and your co-founders as well, and all of those who are around the world helping you be a vocal point for this group, and also the campaign for Yasin Malik. We know that obviously after hearing from you, it's something that you know, it's really unbearable to hear. Not seeing your wife and child for 6 years. That is really, that's just like I can't really imagine how that feels, because I'm just a 20-year-old, not married. But if I like me personally, I've been in lockdown. I'm in London. My family's in Nottingham, and I've not seen them for a few months. And that is, you know, something which is really unbearable, as it is for everyone else who has not been able to see their family in this lockdown. If we just take into account political prisoners who are being deprived of meeting their family, speaking to their family, and seeing their family, it's just, you know.
And they haven't done anything wrong.
Yeah.
They haven't done anything wrong except for raise their voice.
Yeah, as you said, we need to take action, and need more people to become vocal points for this. And Bareen Khan just said, yes, Claire is brilliant, and I completely agree with Bareen Khan. You are brilliant, and I obviously, as I said, I will help you in any way, and I'm sure anyone else who's watching, who's listening, will try their best to contact you. Is there any way they can contact you? Facebook, Twitter? Do you just want to?
Yeah, absolutely. Contact me through Twitter. I've got my own Facebook page, which is under @ClaireLKD. I do try and get into messages in there that are serious messages. I don't take very kindly to how are you, how's your family, what are you doing. But if people want to contact me regarding Kashmir and an issue, they can contact me through that way. And join the group, Let Kashmir Decide Solidarity. We're under on Facebook, that's great. And yeah, Twitter, can contact me through Twitter with serious concerns, and not just, yeah, how are you and what are you doing?
What was your Twitter handle? I didn't even think I would be able to put these words together. Twitter handle.
Oh, you've done it. Well done. I think it's @ClaireLKD. I'm not positive. I think it's @ClaireLKD. Yeah, Let Kashmir. So no, I'm incredibly grateful to all the support from everybody, because I couldn't do what I was doing without that support and all that belief. I once met a lady not long ago into my journey, and was telling her what I was doing. And she said to me quite simply, well, she said, if the people want something, there's no reason why the people can't have it. Yeah. And that is the kind of the philosophy that we go through, you know. Well, we want to see this happen, there's no reason why we can't. And it's having that belief that we can make a difference, because if you give up and you just think this is too hard, then you're not going to go anywhere anyway. So you have to do your best to try.
We've got a question here from Pareen. How do we get Western media to interact? She also said we had so many protests in 2019, but no proper UK media coverage. So yeah, how do we get Western media to interact?
Again, it's a hard one.
Really difficult one, because we know, yeah.
Well, we've tried. We do have some people in our team that are constantly going to online medias and engaging in some of the posts. I have written, we had a big solid car rally in Glasgow where we rallied from Glasgow. We went to BBC studios and the ITV studios, and we delivered a letter asking for coverage on BBC and ITV of the human rights issues. And we were going to be having a meeting with the BBC. It's not happened yet. And with the STV, we keep sending articles. I've got the email addresses of all the Scottish media, and I regularly send them an article for, just sent them one the other day. They're trying to relate that link to freedom for Kashmir with Scotland getting their self-determination and it being a basic right. At the moment, nobody's taken it. COVID just seems to have the hold. For me, we just got to keep trying. We just got to keep knocking at the doors. So, once a week, write a letter to your local paper, or try and send them an article. Or I did manage to get into what was the Oban Times, the local newspaper in Scotland, when I went to Islamabad, because I shared my journey with them and what I wanted to do. And so that was on the front page of the newspaper, and that's massive for a very white community that probably, other than a Kashmir rug, hadn't heard of Kashmir. So I think this was my idea, kind of with the solidarity event, that we thought, could try and get into media. So anything, I think if anybody's, say we were having on the ground events, because that's where we would want to go to, that's what we want to be doing, is at towns, then they can be advertised in local newspapers. That event can be sent. And I think we've just got to keep trying. I think we can write to the BBC and ask for the coverage of the human rights issues. We could write to our MPs to ask them to write to the BBC to get the coverage of the human rights issues. I think there's something within their policy. But obviously, I do think it's somewhere that the Indian lobby have had an influence on, and who's in charge of the media. So I guess it's just keep writing, write articles, try and get in touch with individual, look in newspapers where there's been a reporter that has written on Kashmir. Again, the name's not coming to my head, but there's a lady in the Guardian that often writes an article that will come out. But yes, it suits them to not share our voice out there. So it's just trying to do everything we can, send the articles in Twitter as well, put in at BBC or at Guardian, at Independent, and that really, we could just keep knocking on the door until they hear us.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to start from somewhere, and it's often that we've got to start at the bottom. It all starts local, trying to get these issues into the local newspaper, so more and more people become aware of what is happening in Kashmir, of what governments are violating the people's rights, they rule, they govern. So as you said, obviously we've got to start from somewhere. It starts with local newspapers, getting those issues in there, and then writing to institutions like the BBC, the Guardian, the Independent, the Sun, all stuff like that. But it's an interesting question, because we know that Western media, especially the BBC and ITV and stuff like that, it's very rare for them to highlight stuff like this, because they don't want to upset certain people. They might, sponsor their news channels, fund their news channels. They don't want to upset certain powerful lobbies. But we'll leave that topic.
Yeah, that's another huge topic in itself.
Yeah, that's a completely different
But
topic.
very much when COVID's gone, I mean, we've got a UK Unite group as well, where we're trying to link. Again, we've got regions and into towns, and that's what we wanted to do. We've got Peterborough, where Paul Bristow, the Conservative MP, is a huge voice for Kashmir, and he's done a lot of work for it. And they're kind of like, in Peterborough, it's just an excellent model of support, where the councillors are supporting it, the party members are supporting it, and they've done that from the ground upwards. And so we were hoping to be able to use that kind of model in other towns, and essentially have events that you invite people to, Kashmiri evenings, nights, and so then that's something news that you can share to the people because they come, and then out to the local newspaper. So there's so much more we can do as well once COVID has lifted. At the moment, it's a lot harder to instigate, I think. But something like this is perfect, because this gives us something to share and put about as well.
It's been obviously a fantastic show. I didn't think you would actually, hit an hour. on this talk show. But,
I could probably talk all night.
But yeah, it's been really good to hear about what's happening in Kashmir, political prisoner Yasin Malik. And obviously, I've put your Twitter and Facebook handles there for anyone who wants to get into contact and support Claire in Let Kashmir Decide and become part of this massive group that's working for the citizens in occupied Kashmir and various other places as well. Because once we start in this area, we're able to help. One door opens, hundreds other will open as well. So a massive shout out to Claire and her group, and we're hoping hopefully the British government does take action. I know they've got to take into consideration a lot of trade agreements, as you mentioned. Brexit being a multiplier effect for them. They've got to consider not upsetting certain people, because they're desperate for trade agreements now in order to reach a sustainable growing economy like England was or are, some might say, once upon a time. But yeah, it's been a fantastic show with you. There's Claire's Twitter handle, and here is her Facebook handle for anyone who wants to get into contact with Claire and join her group on Facebook. But yeah, a massive thank you to you, Claire, for coming onto the show, and it has been truly fantastic hearing from you, and it's made me happy that we've got humans out there who are still supporting and being a vocal point for people who don't have a voice and who are deprived of a lot of things. So yeah, a massive thank you to you.
Oh, well, no, thank you for giving me the opportunity to raise my voice and share it. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Claire. Hopefully we'll hear from you maybe in a couple of months, just how your group is going. Hopefully it's really well growing by then, even more. And
well, maybe Kashmir will be free by then.
Yes, let's hope. Hopefully. But we've still got a long way to go. But the work doesn't stop here. It's just onwards and upwards, like the good old saying. But yeah, a massive thank you to Claire for coming onto the show. Thank you. That was Claire Bidwell, a very, very strong vocal point for Kashmir and other human rights violations as well. We heard from her about political prisoners Yasin Malik and how her group Let Kashmir Decide is being a vocal point for people who are imprisoned because of speaking against the atrocities committed by the Indian government in this case. But anyone who wants to join Let Kashmir Decide via Facebook, there is Claire's Facebook handle at Claire LKD, Let Kashmir Decide, and this is Claire's Twitter handle for anyone who wants to join Let Kashmir Decide via Twitter. It is at Claire LKD again. So a massive thank you to her for coming onto the show, and we're hoping to hear from her in a couple of months about the progression of Let Kashmir Decide. And those of you who are wanting to join, please do message her. We'll be back next week with another show. We'll be speaking to Usman Al-Ustani from England, who has gone to America for a soccer sponsorship kind of thing, who's reaching a very high peak of his career and working with football teams in America to become a footballer. So till next week, we'll be back Saturday at 5 p.m. Till then, it's a massive goodbye. Take care of yourselves. Bye bye.